The smell of lilies, that's the first thing I remember. Not the pain, not the lights, not the voices. The smell of cheap funeral lilies somebody had left by my bed in the ICU. I remember thinking, well, that's not a good sign, is it? Somebody's already practicing for my service. My name is Wendolyn. Most folks have called me Wendy since I was about 4 years old, but my mother named me Wendolyn because she said it sounded like a name a woman could grow into. I'm 68 years old now. I worked as a high school librarian in a little town outside of Asheville, North Carolina, for 31 years before I retired. I have one daughter, Brittany, or I had one. I'm still not sure which tense is the right one to use. It happened on a Sunday in October. The leaves were that color they get in the Blue Ridge, that burnt orange that doesn't look real even when you're standing right in front of it. I went to the 8 o'clock service at First Presbyterian like I always did, because the 8 o'clock crowd is mostly old folks and widows, and they don't fuss with you. We were halfway through Be Thou My Vision when I felt the wrong thing in my chest. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Not pain at first, just a wrongness, the way you can sometimes tell a piece of fruit is bad before you bite into it. I sat down. I remember Ruth Ann, who sits 2 pews ahead of me, turning around and giving me that look people give you when they think you might be sleeping in church. Then her face changed. I must have looked bad, because she came back to my pew and grabbed my wrist, and the last thing I remember was her saying, "Honey," and the choir still singing about the high tower of my salvation. I found out later it was a widowmaker. Left anterior descending artery 98% blocked. They had to crack my chest open right there at the regional hospital. The cardiac surgeon told me later that if it had happened in the parking lot instead of the sanctuary, I'd be in the ground. He said it like he was paying me a compliment. When I came out of surgery, I didn't wake up. I went into something they kept calling a non-responsive state. Not a coma exactly, they said, but close enough that they were treating it like one. My brain didn't want to come back to the party yet. The doctor started calling my next of kin. They had Brittany down as my emergency contact. They had her cell, her work line at the real estate office, her husband's cell, the house phone. Over the course of 3 days, the hospital called my daughter 51 times. 51. I have the printout. I asked for it later, when I could ask for things again. There's something about seeing it on paper. 48 outgoing calls from the hospital, 3 from the chaplain's office, all to the same numbers, all going to voicemail. Some of them, you can see in the log, lasted less than 4 seconds. That's how long it takes to look at your phone, see who's calling, and decide not to answer. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The first face I saw when I came back wasn't my daughter's. It wasn't anyone I'd have predicted. It was a young woman in a navy cardigan, asleep in the chair by my bed with her cheek pressed against the rail. There was a Bible open in her lap, one of those big print ones that old folks use, but she was maybe 28, 29. I didn't know her. I didn't know her at all. I made some kind of sound and her eyes flew open and she just started crying. Not the polite kind of crying, the kind you do when you've been holding something in for a long, long time. "Oh, Miss Wendy," she said. "Oh, thank you, Lord." It took me a while to place her. My mind was slow. They'd had me on so many drugs I couldn't have named the president. But after a few minutes of her sitting there holding my hand, I figured it out. She was Carlisle. Carlisle Webb. She'd been my student worker at the library her senior year of high school, almost 10 years back. Shy girl. Wrote poetry in the back of the periodicals room when she thought I wasn't looking. Her mama had died of breast cancer her junior year, and her daddy had taken to the bottle, and her grandmother, who raised her after that, had passed 2 summers ago. I had written her a college recommendation letter. I had not seen her in 6 years. "How are you here?" I said. My voice didn't sound like my voice. It sounded like somebody dragging a chair across a floor. She told me, slowly, because I couldn't track much. She had been at the 8 o'clock service that morning. She'd just moved back to town to take a job at the community college teaching freshman composition. She had recognized me from across the sanctuary, had been planning to come say hello after the service. And then she'd seen me go down. She rode in the ambulance with me because nobody else was there to. The EMT asked if she was family, and she said yes. She lied for me. A girl I had not seen in 6 years lied to paramedics so I wouldn't be alone. She had not gone home in 3 days. She had slept in that chair. Some of the nurses brought her food from the cafeteria. She had taught her Tuesday morning class on her phone from the hallway outside the ICU. I didn't know what to do with that information. I still don't, honestly. There are some kindnesses that don't fit anywhere in your head. You just have to set them down on the table and look at them for a while. "Have you been able to reach my daughter?" I asked her. That was the wrong question. I saw it on her face before she answered. "They've been trying, Miss Wendy. They've been trying, Miss Wendy. They've been trying real hard." I asked her for my phone. The nurses had bagged it with my things. She fished it out and handed it to me, and I looked at the screen, and there was nothing. No missed calls from Brittany, no texts, nothing. But there was Instagram, because I never close my apps. And I'd followed my daughter's account because what kind of mother doesn't? And there, at the top of the feed, posted 42 hours ago, was a picture of my daughter and my son-in-law and my 8-year-old grandson Bennett standing on a white sand beach in matching cream-colored linen. Brittany had her arms thrown over her head like she was at a concert. The caption said, "Finally got the family getaway we needed. No phones, no work, no negativity. Just sunshine and the people who pour into me. Number blessed. Number protect your peace. Number boundary beautiful." She had geotagged it. Sanibel Island, Florida. I put the phone face down on the blanket. Carlisle was watching me. She didn't ask. She just took my other hand. I want to tell you I cried. I didn't. Not then. I'd cried so much in my life over my daughter that I think I'd just used up that particular muscle. What I felt was something colder, something more like recognition. Like when you finally figure out a crossword clue you've been staring at for an hour, and the answer is something so obvious you can't believe you missed it. The answer was, she has never loved me the way I love her. Maybe she has never loved me at all. And I have spent 41 years pretending otherwise. Let me back up. I had Brittany late. I was 36, married to a good man named Carl who worked for the power company. We'd been trying for 10 years before she came. When she finally showed up, I treated her like she was made of spun sugar. Carl used to joke that she had me wrapped around her finger before she could even point one. He wasn't wrong. Carl died when Brittany was 12, aneurysm. He went out to mow the lawn on a Saturday and didn't come back in. I found him by the magnolia tree. After that, it was just the two of us, me and her, and I poured everything I had into being enough for both of us. I worked the librarian job, picked up summer hours at the bookstore, kept Carl's pension intact so she could go to whichever college she wanted. She went to Vanderbilt. I drove her down there in a U-Haul and unpacked her dorm room and drove the U-Haul home and cried the whole 8 hours. And called her that night and she didn't pick up. That should have been my first sign. There were so many first signs. I just kept refusing to count them. She married a man named Trent, who sells commercial insurance. He's not a bad person exactly. He's just one of those men who measures everything in dollars and then gets offended when the math doesn't work in his favor. They live in a 4-bedroom in a development outside of Charlotte. Bennett came along 8 years ago, and that boy is the light of my whole life. He calls me Mimi. He used to call me every Sunday night on FaceTime because I'd taught him how when he was 4. Then about a year and a half ago, the call stopped. When I'd ask Brittany about it, she'd say Bennett was just so busy with travel soccer. You know how it is, Mom. Kids his age have such full lives. He was 7. He had a full life. The thing I should tell you, the thing that matters to what comes next, is that about 2 years ago, I sold my house. Carl and I had bought it in 1982 for $46,000. I sold it for $390,000. After the realtor's cut and paying off the last of the equity line, I walked away with $270,000 cash. I moved into a 1-bedroom condo in a senior community where they shovel your walk and fix your toilet, and you can walk to a Bojangles. It was the smartest decision I'd made in 20 years. Brittany, when she found out about the sale, drove up from Charlotte the next weekend. She hadn't visited in 14 months. She brought a casserole. She sat at my new kitchen counter and asked me, very casually, what I was planning to do with all that money. Live on it, I said, along with Social Security and Daddy's pension. Sure. But Mom, with the market right now, Trent's been saying, it might make more sense to let us help you manage it. You shouldn't be stressing about that at your age. I told her I'd think about it. I never did think about it. I parked the money in a couple of CDs and a high-yield savings account and forgot about it. But I noted something that day. I noted the look on her face when I said I'd think about it. It was the same look she'd had at 16 when I told her she couldn't have the car keys. A flicker. Quick. Like a fish underwater. Then back to the casserole. Okay, back to the hospital. I spent 6 more days there. 3 of them I don't remember well because the nurses kept giving me things. But by day 5, I was up and walking the halls, dragging my IV pole like a reluctant dance partner, and Carlisle was still there. I made her go home and sleep in her own bed eventually. She came back every morning at 7 with 2 cups of coffee from the place on Marymount Avenue and a fresh paperback for me to read because she'd noticed I kept the library books face down on my chest. Brittany did not call. On day 4, a nurse named Yolanda came in and told me, very gently, that they had finally gotten through to my daughter the night before. Yolanda had this way of telling you bad news, where she'd touch your hand first. She said Brittany had explained that she'd been on a wellness retreat and had her phone off, and she was so glad to hear her mother had pulled through, and she'd try to come up next weekend if she could rearrange some things at work. Rearrange. I said to Yolanda. Thank you, sweetheart. Yolanda looked at me for a long second. Black woman, about my age, the kind of eyes that have seen everything twice. She said, Miss Wendolyn, you let me know if you need anything at all. I knew what she meant. I appreciated it. I think she's the one who first put the idea in my head, though she didn't say a single concrete word. Bennett came to see me on day 6. This is the part I still don't entirely understand. Carlisle had said something to somebody at church, and somebody at church had a sister in Charlotte, and that sister knew a woman who taught 2nd grade at Bennett School, and word got back to my son-in-law's mother, who is a decent woman with a backbone of iron and who has, I think, never entirely approved of her son's marriage. My in-law mother-in-law, Charlene, drove up from Charlotte and brought Bennett with her. She told Brittany she was taking him to the Children's Museum. Bennett walked into my hospital room, and I have never in my life seen a small child move that fast. He hit me in the chest hard enough that I yelped, which made him cry, which made me cry, which made Charlene cry, which made Carlisle, sitting in the corner, also cry. We were a whole soggy mess of women weeping at an 8-year-old. Mimi, he said into my shoulder. Mom said you were just sick. She said you didn't want visitors. Did she know? She said you needed your space. Bennett, I said. Baby, look at me. He looked at me. He had Carl's eyes. Sometimes I forget how much of Carl is still walking around in that boy. Listen to me. I will always want to see you. Always want to see you. Always. There is no version of me that doesn't want to see you. You hear? He nodded. He had a little snot bubble going. He's 8. Charlene and I sat for a while after Carlisle took Bennett down to the cafeteria for a milkshake. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Eventually she just said, Wendolyn, what do you need from me? I need a ride to my lawyer's office when I get out of here, I said. And I need you not to tell my daughter where I am for a little while. She nodded once. That woman. Stainless steel under cashmere. I got out of the hospital on a Thursday. Carlisle drove me home, helped me up the stairs of my condo, made me a pot of vegetable soup, and went home to her own apartment for the first night in over a week. I sat in my own armchair and looked at my own ceiling and thought about my daughter for a long, long time. Brittany finally called me on Saturday afternoon. I let it ring 4 times. I have never let her ring more than twice in my whole life. On the 5th ring, I picked up. Mom! Oh my God, Mom, I have been so worried. I have been trying to get through to that hospital. You would not believe the runaround they gave me. Every time I called, Brittany, said they couldn't share information, and I'm your daughter. Like, I had to literally fight to, Brittany, stop. She stopped. There was a silence on the line so thick you could have spread it on toast. I saw your beach photos, honey. Another silence. Longer. Mom, that trip had been planned for months. We couldn't just. And honestly, by the time we found out it was serious, you were already stable. And Trent said, "Don't do this. You know how I get when I'm stressed. The doctor said you were going to be fine. They called you 51 times, Brittany. I had not meant to say the number. It just came out of me." I heard her breathing on the other end. I heard her trying to come up with what to say. And then she did what she always does when she's caught. She got angry. You know what, Mom? This is exactly the kind of guilt tripping I was talking about with my therapist. You always do this. You make everything about you. Trent said you would do this. I cannot deal with this stress right now. I am literally just trying to recover from a really hard year. And recover from what, Brittany? From a lot of things you don't understand. You're right, I said. I don't. I hung up. She called back 9 times that afternoon. I didn't pick up. She texted me a long thing about how she was so hurt that I would make this about me, and how she had been planning to come up next weekend, and how she really needed me to understand that her mental health had to come first right now. I read it. I didn't answer. The next Tuesday, Charlene drove me to my lawyer. His name is Mr. Pettigrew. He's been my lawyer since Carl died. He's in his 70s now, has a little wood-paneled office above a dry cleaner on Patton Avenue, smells faintly of pipe tobacco even though I'm pretty sure he doesn't smoke anymore. I told him what I wanted. He didn't even blink. He just got out a yellow legal pad. The old will had left everything to Brittany, with a small trust set aside for Bennett's college. The condo, the savings, the CDs, Carl's remaining pension benefits, my car, my mother's silver, all of it. About $315,000 in liquid assets, plus the condo, which was worth another $220,000. The new will, the one I dictated to Mr. Pettigrew that afternoon, did 3 things. 1, it left Bennett's college trust intact and added another $50,000 to it, with Charlene as the sole trustee. Brittany would have no access. Trent would have no access. The money was for Bennett, period. 2, it left a single dollar to my daughter Brittany, along with a sentence that Mr. Pettigrew helped me phrase. I won't tell you exactly what it said because some things you write for one person and one person only, and even now I don't want it diluted, but the gist was, this is what you decided I was worth. Here it is. 3, it left the remainder of my estate, everything else, every last penny, in a charitable trust I created that afternoon. Mr. Pettigrew helped me set it up. The Carlisle Webb Scholarship for first-generation students at the local community college, named after the girl who had slept in a hospital chair for 3 nights because nobody else came. I told Carlisle about it a week later, sitting at my kitchen table with 2 mugs of decaf between us, and she cried so hard she got the hiccups, and then I cried, and then we both started laughing, and the whole afternoon was a wash. I want to be clear about something. I didn't do any of that to hurt Brittany. I want to be clear about that because I have asked myself the question 1,000 times since. Was I being cruel? Was I being petty? Was I letting myself become bitter in my old age? No, I wasn't. I was finally, for the first time in 41 years, being honest about what I had seen. A mother's love is supposed to be unconditional. People say that all the time. But here's something nobody tells you. A mother's love being unconditional doesn't mean a mother has to keep paying the bill for a daughter who treats her like furniture. Unconditional love means I will always love her. It does not mean I will always fund her. It does not mean I will leave her my house to sell while my body is still warm. It does not mean I will pretend a beach trip during a coma is something I can wave away with a casserole. She called me, in the end. The thing the comments on these stories always seem to want, the panicked phone call. I got it. It was about 6 weeks after the new will was signed. I don't know how she found out. I suspect Charlene let something slip on purpose, the way some people let things slip on purpose. The phone rang at 9:30 on a Wednesday night, and I picked up because I wasn't going to live my life dodging phone calls anymore. She was sobbing. Real sobs, not performance ones. I could tell the difference. I had been hearing both for 41 years. "Mom, please, what did you do?" I just talked to. Somebody told me, "Please tell me you didn't actually." "Mom, I'm your daughter, Mom. I know who you are, honey. You can't just cut me off like this. You can't just—" "I didn't cut you off, Brittany. I have never cut you off. You can call me anytime. You can come see me anytime." I would love that. I would love it more than anything in this world. Then why? But I am no longer going to leave my life savings to somebody who couldn't pick up the phone for 3 days while I was dying. I love you. That's why I'm telling you the truth. I love you enough to stop lying to you about what I see. She didn't have an answer for that. She tried a few. They were all the old answers, Trent said. The therapist said, the wellness retreat, the boundaries. She'd been hurting too. You don't understand how hard her year had been. How could I not see how hard her year had been? I let her talk. I didn't argue. After a while, she ran out of words and just breathed. "Brittany," I said, "I'm going to bed now. I love you. Tell Bennett his Mimi loves him too. Good night, sweetheart." I hung up. I went on a trip the following spring. Carlisle came with me. We drove out to the coast and rented a little cottage on Ocracoke for 10 days. I took my heart medication every morning with grapefruit juice. We read paperbacks on the porch. We talked about her grandmother and about Carl and about poetry and about the strange way a life can hand you a daughter who treats you like a stranger and a stranger who treats you like a daughter. And you don't get to vote on which is which. You just have to be paying attention enough to notice. Bennett came to see me for a weekend that summer. Charlene drove him up. He's 9 now. He brought me a drawing he made of me and him at the beach, even though we have never been to the beach together. I have it on my refrigerator. I am 68 years old. I had a heart attack at church, and my daughter went to Florida. I have $180,000 in CDs, a paid-off condo, a pension, Social Security, and a Toyota Camry with 41,000 miles on it. I have a young woman who calls me Miss Wendy and brings me coffee on Tuesdays. I have a grandson who calls me Mimi when nobody's listening. I have a church pew at the 8 o'clock service where Ruth Ann still sits 2 rows ahead of me, and every Sunday when we sing the doxology, she turns around and gives me a little nod, the kind that says, "You're still here, and so am I," and that's the whole job. That's the whole job. Being here, showing up, singing the doxology, and meaning it. My daughter did not show up. That's not my failure. I spent 41 years thinking it was. It wasn't. It never was. If you're listening to this and you're a mother somewhere who is wondering whether you're allowed to stop pouring yourself into a child who has decided you don't matter, I want you to hear me. You are allowed. You are allowed to love them and stop funding them. You are allowed to leave the door open and stop standing in it. You are allowed to spend your money on the people who showed up, even if those people share none of your blood. Blood is what's in your veins. Family is who's in the chair beside the hospital bed. That's all I came here to say. I'm going to go put the kettle on now. Carlisle's coming over at 4. We're going to pick out flowers for the garden. The lilies are blooming early this year, and I've decided I like them again. Funny how that works. You go through something hard enough, and even the smell of funeral flowers starts to smell like the day you woke up. I have thought a lot in the months since all of this happened about why a woman like me kept pouring herself into a daughter who had clearly stopped pouring back. And I think the honest answer is this. I was afraid. I was afraid that if I stopped, I would have to admit something I had spent 41 years refusing to admit. That love alone does not make a person love you back. That you can do everything right and still raise a child who treats you like an inconvenience. That being a good mother does not guarantee you a good daughter. Brittany did not become who she is by accident. I see that now. Every time I made an excuse for her, every time I drove 8 hours after she didn't answer my call, Every time I sent a check she didn't thank me for, I was teaching her something. I was teaching her that my love had no floor, that she could treat me however she wanted and I would still be there with a casserole. Cause and effect. I built the very thing that broke my heart, one small accommodation at a time. Carlisle taught me something different. She had every reason in the world to be hard. Her mother gone, her father lost in a bottle, her grandmother in the ground. By all rights, that girl should have grown up with a closed fist for a heart. Instead, she sat in a hospital chair for 3 nights and lied to paramedics so a stranger would not die alone. Character is not handed to you by your circumstances. Character is what you do with them. That is the difference between Brittany and Carlisle, and it has nothing to do with whose blood is in whose veins. If I could go back and say one thing to the younger version of myself, the woman driving the U-Haul home from Vanderbilt with her face wet, I would tell her this. Strength is not the same as endurance. Loving someone is not the same as funding their disrespect. You are allowed to see clearly. You are allowed to use what you see. A wise woman does not keep walking into the same wall hoping the wall will move. I kept my $180,000. I kept my condo. I kept my Sunday pew and my Tuesday coffee with Carlisle and my Saturday calls with Bennett. I gave my daughter the truth, packaged in a single dollar, because the truth was the only inheritance she had ever actually earned. And I went on living. That was the resolution, not revenge, just the quiet courage of finally telling the truth about what my own 2 eyes had seen. If you are out there carrying a love that costs you everything and gives you nothing back, I want you to hear me. You do not owe anyone the slow erasure of yourself. Love them from a distance if you must. Keep the porch light on, but put the deadbolt back where it belongs. That is not bitterness. That is wisdom finally arriving, a little late, but right on time.